The death of Desdemona is not the culminating act, of course. The title character here is Othello, and if it's the title character, the main character is not Othello, it's Iago, and we finally have these two characters brought together, where Othello is able to insist to Iago or ask of Iago what audiences have been kind of trying to figure out the whole play long, which is lines Act 5, Scene 2. He says, "Will you, I pray, demand that demi-devil why he hath thus ensnared my soul and body? In short, why have you done this? What has been your motivation? You've given us a bunch of motives, or you've given the audience a bunch of motivations, but it's never been clear. Why did you do this?" And Iago says, "Demand me nothing. I won't speak a word." And of course, there's a threat of torture. They say, "Yeah, oh yeah, we'll make you talk." And of course, but what we know of torture now is that torture very rarely reveals the truth. Torture reveals anything the person being tortured will say to stop the torture. In other words, Iago remains at the very end, this motiveless malignity, this pit that can't be sort of fully understood. Othello, for his part, remains very much a split personality. This North African Moor converted to Christianity. He split himself in half. And his death speech reveals something of that. This is lines 348 of Act 5, Scene 2. "Soft you, a word or two before you go. I have done the state some service, and they know it. No more of that. I pray you in your letters, when you shall these unlucky deeds relate, speak of me as I am. Nothing extenuate nor set down aught in malice." That is, tell the whole picture. Tell the whole picture. Don't overinflate my story, but at the same time, don't overly condemn me either, which is always tricky to do. "But if you do that," he says, "then you must speak of one that loved wisely but too well, of one not easily jealous, but being wrought, perplexed in the extreme, of one whose hand, like the base Indian, threw a pearl away richer than all his tribe." And of course, in this imagery, Othello figures himself as the base Indian. By the way, in the folio text, it's Indian. In the earlier quarto text, that word is Judean. And in Judean, we see that strange Jewish Muslim conflation again. The point here is, I am the strange other, this non-Christian other, who was given a Christian pearl, Desdemona, and I cast it away. I threw it away. And I was one whose subdued eyes, albeit unused to the melting mood, drops tears as fast as the Arabian trees their medicinal gums, and set you down this, and say besides that in Aleppo once, and unfortunately because of current events, we all know where Aleppo is, Mediterranean and Syria, but say in Aleppo once there was a malignant and turbaned Turk who was beating a Venetian and traduced the state. I took by the throat the circumcised dog and smote him thus. In other words, in his last words, Othello recalls an event where, probably as a recently converted Christian, he attacked a Muslim Turk who was beating a fellow Christian, a now fellow Christian, and he killed that turbaned Turk. But in his last moment, Othello says, I'm both. I'm both the turbaned Turk who was beating and killing, and I'm both the Christian avenger. I have this split identity. My conversion, in other words, never fully took. And it might never have fully took because it was brought about by this Catholic Christian world. And again, the Catholic Christian world, from the vantage point of Shakespeare's English Protestant world, is not the authentic Christian world. That Catholic Christian world, that Catholic Spanish world, remember that name, Iago, Santiago, is false. That's a Christianity that relies on looking, seeing, icons, false idols, right? It's entirely too fragile, okay? It's entirely too superficial. It's entirely tied to magic. And if that's your Christianity, that's where you're grounding your conversion, that conversion is going to come apart. Rather, true Christian faith in the early English Protestant imagination needs to be tied to individual faith, a faith that eschews visual proof, a faith that eschews icons, a faith that is tied to a pure love, a pure giving over absolutely to the divine, to a divine that can neither be seen nor represented by any woman, by any statue, by any ceremony.